Good afternoon, everybody. RD here. I've got a bit of a unique review today. It's the JJRC H23 flying car. This is a pretty cool little thing, actually. I was a bit skeptical because I just thought it might be a novelty, the fact that you can drive it on the ground or you take off and fly, but I actually was pleasantly surprised at how well it actually works. Now, it's no speed demon by any means on the ground. It is only rear wheel drive, so it doesn't have a lot of power on the ground, and it's not super fast, but it does scoot along good enough that it's kind of cool to drive along and then take off and fly. But where it really shines is where it flies. It flies extremely well, much better than I expected it to. It's sporty. It's got 3 rate modes that you can fly in. A beginner and an intermediate and expert. I like to fly in the highest mode, and it works. It works surprisingly well. The yaw increases as you increase the rates. So beginner's mode it's kind of sluggish. Not a lot of pitch. The yaw is rather slow. Intermediate's pretty good, and expert is just right. It's not a crazy fast yaw like some of the JJRC products. And expert rate is just right on that. It's got kind of unique LEDs. Now it's got these very small LEDs on the bottom. It's got a set of it's red LEDs in the front and green in the back, but there you can see those little LED pods there are quite small, so they're not very bright in the daytime. They're pretty hard to see because it's so small. But it also has a blue LED in the tail light here. It's so you know that it's the rear. And it's got, you can see it's got blue here where the dome, where I guess where the driver would be inside of the car. So if I turn it on here, I've got actually the battery's not in it. I thought I had it in a while ago, but I'd be able to show you there. But take my word for it, it's just blue on the top back and blue on the top. But you can't see that either, obviously, especially up in the air on top. But you can kind of make out the rear light. So with many of these 1S LiPo type quadcopters, and just obviously it's a quad in a car, but the LEDs are not going to be easy to see during the day, so that's pretty common. It's nothing unexpected there. I get a really good flight time and drive time with this, but it's kind of hard to measure that because this is a ground and an air vehicle, so it depends on how much time you're going to spend on the ground, because when you're on the ground you're just going to spin these back tires. I'm not sure if it runs off a motor here or if it runs off of a gear off the rear. I'm pretty sure it runs off a motor here. I don't think you could run it off these the propellers. I think it would turn the props. So you'll get more run time if you're just running around the ground. But that's not the best aspect of this. It's more for taking off from driving. So I get in like 9 minutes, and a combination of driving on the ground and taking it and flying around. But I'm primarily in the air with it. But I might spend a minute or so of the flight, or the play time, I should call it, on the ground. So pretty good length of time that you can take this out and play with it. You have about a 1 minute LVA, the low voltage alarm. Of course, when you're on the ground, that's going to be hard to see, but the bottom lights and the dome lights and all those in the rear light will all flash when it reaches that. And I had it up in the air in the evening and waited for it to come down. But it does start to lose its punch even before the low voltage alarm. When you're starting to go up, you can see it starting to get sluggish at around the 7-8 minute mark. But it still works, especially if you get on the ground. So you get plenty of time out of it. It does 3D flips, so I would recommend doing that early on in the flight if you're wanting to. It executes those really, really well. But as it starts to get, the voltage starts to drop, it starts to get a little bit sluggish on those, and it has a little trouble recovering. So I would recommend doing those flips early on in the time that you have it up in the air. It takes about an hour and a half to charge it up, so it's not too terrible. It comes with a 1S 3.7 volt 750 milliamp per hour battery, so a decent sized little battery. So that's part of the reason why we get that good long run time. It only comes with 2 spare props. So I kind of would have liked to have seen them come with a full set, but the propellers seem pretty durable. I've crashed it into a few things, and the propellers seem fine. So not a deal breaker, but really nice to have for. Also comes with a Phillips screwdriver for removing the propellers. Here's the USB charging cable that comes with it, pretty standard like the other JJRC products you use. The controller looks a lot like all the other JJRC controllers. Looks pretty much identical to my H31, except for it doesn't have the LCD screen down here, which is no big deal. These knobs on top are not functional, just to get that out of the way from the get-go, just like the other ones, just for looks. The trim for the pitch and the roll functions. The throttle trim is not operational on this. It's for the the FPV version of this car that I don't think they released it yet, but when they do, you can see here in the nose there's a spot for a little camera in there. It even has SD, so there'll be a spot for an SD card on the side. Not sure if that's going to show up in the video or not, but that's where they'll put it when they release that model. You change the rates with what would be the yaw trim, and that will be 2 times or 3 times to go between rates. The rates does not affect the speed of it on the ground, just the speed of it when it's flying gives it more pitch and increases the yaw. The top right bumper is for 3D flips. You tap that, it beeps, and then you push it right or left. It will only roll right or left. When I was doing my flight video, I was trying to get it to flip forward and back, and it just keeps beeping. So it will not do a forward roll or a back roll. At least I've not gotten it to. But it flips right and left. But it could just be, it's longer quadcopter, and they just, for some reason, they don't want it to do a front and rear flip. So just right and left. The left bumper up here, this button is for entering headless mode, if you use that, and 1 key return. I think you tap it for 1 key return to bring it back to you, and you hold it down to enter headless mode, and then again to exit out of it. To calibrate the gyros, which I always recommend to do at least on your first flight, or if you crash, it's down and to the right, and then the lights will flash, and during the daytime that is impossible to see with those little lights. So just do it for 3 or 4 seconds, and it's going to have it calibrated. To reset headless mode for your 1 key return, you're going to press it down and to the left. And a similar deal, I think the lights will flash in a different pattern. So I think that pretty much covers the transmitter. It's a great little flyer. It only weighs 113 grams, so there's no FAA registration needed for this. If you are registered, you don't need to put it on there, so it's well under the limits there. Just checking my notes over here to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers most all of it. It's like I said, it's a little slow on the ground, and it's definitely not for off-road use. It's just going to work good for ground driving on a smooth surface like a road, asphalt, sidewalk, something like that. So yeah, I think I pretty much covered it all. So let's go ahead and move on to the flight review. 3 flying car. Let's go ahead and turn it on and take it up and drive it around, I guess you could say. It's kind of easy to get it switched if you don't pay attention. This blue light is for the rear, and of course this would be the dome like where a driver would be. See, I'm able to see now they said the blue flashing lights here before I bound it, but it does have blue lights in the dome and the rear. So you have lights on the top and the bottom. Let's go ahead and bind it. Okay, and you drive with just the right stick only, so that makes it a little trickier to drive. There's just one speed, it's just rear wheel drive. See here. So it doesn't have a lot of power. You don't want it to try to drive it. You won't drive through grass or any kind of rock, maybe a very fine rock, but basically just pavement like this road or your sidewalk or driveway is the only place you're really going to be able to drive it. So let's go ahead and we'll drive it here first. And it moves along decently. It kind of wants to spin out because you're trying to turn without using the left stick. As soon as you touch the left stick, the propellers will start to spin up. So take it here and kind of turn it around, and then we'll take off. And that is pretty cool. I kind of thought it'd just be a novelty, but it actually works pretty well. It flies extremely well. This is in low rate. You can see the yaw. That's intermediate, and that's expert. I like to fly an expert. Now that does not affect the speed of it whenever you're driving it. It is just one speed when you're driving on the ground. Let's do some flips now. As it starts to get a little low, it starts to lose its punch and doesn't do flips very well, even before the low voltage alarm. But I was getting about 9 minutes if you're mixed between flying and driving. I think if you just stayed in the air, you're going to get less, longer the more you're driving the ground, since you're just using, I think, probably just one motor to drive the wheels. Let's go ahead and do a few flips. And it flips nicely whenever you do it early on and you have full power. Let's try it again. If you try to do flips too soon in a row, it doesn't always want to do it, so you kind of need to wait a moment. And it doesn't like, I don't think it wants to do a flip forward. You may only be able to do flips. Yeah, I think you can only do flips right and left. Let me try it again here. Yeah, you can't do a forward flip. You can only do a right or a left flip, which isn't a big deal. I mean, it's a car. It's kind of, with it being so long, it's probably one reason why they don't allow it to do a front and a back flip. I done flips the other day, but couldn't remember that. I think I was just doing sideways flips then too. So that's why I was having trouble with it on my last review. I was trying to do forward and back flips. So let's bring it down again, and we'll do a little driving on the ground again. The LEDs are obviously a lot easier to see here late in the evening. During the day, you're not going to be able to see them very well at all. You can't see the blue ones at all. You can see the tail light a little bit. The bottom lights are pretty small. It does have headless mode and one key return, which not a fan of those on these toys, so I'm not going to mess with that. But it flies really well for 30 bucks. I think it is for a car that flies. I think it's pretty cool. Let's get it off this way so we can see it a little better. It's getting so late in the evening now. It flies similar like the JJRC H23 drone, but it doesn't have that crazy insane yaw rate. So that's a plus, because that would make it impossible to keep orientation with such a fast yaw. But I like the yaw on the Expert. It's just, I'd say it's perfect. And you go all the way down to there's beginner mode. It's pretty sluggish, not much pitch. You couldn't fight much wind. Let's go ahead and land it. I'm gonna go ahead and take it back up to Expert just so I'm in that mode when I take off. Take it up one more time here before we end the flight review. Make sure you get plenty of room whenever you do this, because when you're driving it and you want to take off, it tends to want to stay close to the ground. And so if you're near another car or something, you could easily smash into something. It doesn't get a lot of altitude if you're moving forward. Now, if you just want to take off from the ground and go straight up and not moving, it works perfect. But when you're driving, it tends to want to stay close. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers the flight review and drive review of it. You see it moves along nicely. And like I said, maybe about 9 minutes or so, especially if you spend some time on the ground where it's going to use less battery. All right. Well, that concludes the flight and drive review of the JJRC H23 flying car. Thanks.